Hey guys, it's Meow here. Just back to read some more true scary stories from Reddit. You'll notice that the pictures I have here are not the usual ones that I use. I kind of ran out of pictures from people that were making them for me for my videos. So these are all pictures that I've just taken kind of around where I live and stuff, and I messed around with filters and stuff like that. So I hope you enjoy them, and I hope you like the stories. Here we go. Before I start, here's a bit of context to my story. My husband and I live in a small two-floor house with two main entrances, one along the front and the other on the side of the house, which opens up into the laundry room. When we're too busy or it's too late to walk our dog, we hook his collar onto a long line that's attached to one of the pipes on the corner of our house so we can use the bathroom. We used to do this from the door in our laundry room, but we noticed the large step from the door to the ground had been taking a toll on his hips. As a result, we started letting him out through the front door instead, since the porch is much closer to the ground. This particular night, I was home alone with my dog, and it was around midnight when I decided to let him outside one last time before going to bed. I hook him up to his line, close the door and lock it, before heading into the kitchen to put away the dishes. This was pretty routine. Even if he used the bathroom quickly, he liked to walk around along the front and the side of the house for a few minutes before coming back inside. As I'm putting away the dishes, I hear a scratch on the door, which is how my dog signals that he wants to come back inside, so I head over to the door to let him in. Since I've watched way too many scary movies, I always look through the door's peephole before opening the door. Out of habit, I look to check that my dog is in front of the door. Instead, I see a man staring very intently at the door handle. I freeze with my hand on the door handle. I don't know how much time went by, but then I heard another scratch, this one louder than the last. This kind of wakes me up from my initial shock, and I run to grab my cell phone. I call my husband to tell him what's happening. He was very confused. I probably wasn't explaining the situation very well, but he says that he's heading home. This is when I realize my dog is still outside with this person. I head back to the front door, trying to make as little noise as possible to check whether the stranger is still there. Just like before, he's standing there, head bowed, looking at the doorknob. I tiptoe over to the laundry room and slowly open the door as quietly as possible. I can't see my dog anywhere, and the side of my house is covered in gravel. I knew I couldn't step outside without making a lot of noise. With my heart still pounding in my chest, I go to the front door to keep an eye on the stranger and to get a better look at him. I considered calling the police, but I didn't feel they would take me seriously, since all this man was doing was standing in front of my house. I tried taking a picture of him with my cell phone, but my camera was only able to take pictures of the peephole and not the images behind the glass. All of a sudden, the man looks up directly at me. I swear he knew I was there. He glares at me, then opens his mouth to show this taunting, malicious grin. He stood there that way for a few seconds. With that, he turns around and walks down the street. I stay in the same place, almost expecting him to rush back and start pounding on the door. Luckily, my husband got back after a few minutes. Long story short, he convinced me to call the police and we went out looking for our dog. It turns out that this man had cut the end of the line connected to the pipe, and our dog had decided this was a good time for him to explore my neighbor's backyard, which is where we found him. It's been 3 years since this happened. We've moved to a new house for unrelated reasons, and the police weren't able to come up with any suspects. Ever since then, we take our dog on very long walks before the sun goes down. This happened about 5 to 6 years ago. I was 15 at the time, male just to note. Now I've heard from my mom about pedophiles, etc. a lot when I was young. Never get into one's car, no matter what they offer you and so on, you know the drill. I never got snatched, and the older I got, the safer I started to feel. Who would want to rape a pimply teenage boy, were my thoughts. At that time, I was sure that the danger of getting snatched and raped was over. Let's get on with the encounter. I was an asshole as a teen, compensating for a youth of the glasses and braces combo, I suppose. Anyways, it was one of those days that I decided to skip the first few hours of school to sleep in. So I took the train 3 hours later at a time where all kids are in school already and the train was completely empty. I enter on my stop, start listening to music and relax. While daydreaming around, I noticed the elbow of a person wearing a jacket a few seats in front of me. After another station, the person stood up from their seat, looked around, and came to sit with me. It was an elderly man, not old, but oldish, 55 to 58 years old, I would guess, balding white hair. Even though I was an asshole, I valued manners since I came from a pretty good family, so I took my earbuds out and greeted the man. He greeted me back, but looked at me strangely. Nobody has ever looked at me like that. Later on in my life, I realized that it was a look of lust. It sounds weird, but it's something real. You notice it in someone's eyes. As I attempt to continue listening to music, he starts up a conversation, despite my signal that I would like to be alone. He tells me that he is returning from a long night of gambling in this big city near my station. He won big money. I congratulate him, and actually got more interested in the conversation since I have never talked to a gambler before. We engage in casual talk, and at some point he tells me that his new dishwasher was standing in front of his door, and he could not lift it. If I could get off one station earlier to help him, being an old man and all. I tell him that I have to get to school and apologize. He offers me $50. I tell him no. He says $150. He really needs help. I would just have to get his apartment, remove the old one, and help him get the new one up. At this point I'm getting suspicious. I lived in southern Germany back then. People are very friendly around these parts, so you could easily ask your neighbors to help you, and most would gladly take the time out of their day to come help you. I asked him if he has no relatives, etc., but whatever angle I tried, it ended up with me going back to his house. The situation was getting super intense. I just wanted to go, but I really felt like he would try to stop me if I just stood up. And who was going to help me in an empty train 10 minutes away from the next stop? He noticed that I was nervous and offered me even more money, $200 to help him. No money in the world could get me into this guy's house. So I figured out the perfect plan. He would not engage me when I was on the phone. So while my music was still playing, I pretended like I was just moving my hand in my jacket like you do. After a few minutes of super awkward talk, him telling me I looked strong and well-groomed, etc., a new song was about to start and I unplugged my headphones. The new song started up on speakers and I pretended I was taking a call. I excused myself and stood up, turned off the music, walked out of the wagon to the exit part, pretending to have a conversation with my father. I saw people waiting for the train as we were closing in on the next station, 3 more to my school station, 2 more to murder-rape station, and decided it was time to make a leave. Creepy guy was waving at me from time to time. I ignored him. Train enters the station. Creepy guy is standing up, coming towards me. I literally jump out of the train and make a run for it. I looked back as I turned the corner and saw him leaving the train. I've never ran this fast before. I ran until I couldn't breathe anymore, called my mother to pick me up, and never talked about it again. Don't ask me why I didn't talk about it or report it. I guess I thought it was silly reporting a possible rapist as teenage male. I like to calm myself by thinking about him just being an old gambler in the need of someone helping him get his dishwasher up the stairs, but deep down I know that that was just not the case. Creepy old man from the train, let's not meet again. A couple years ago I found myself in a very disturbing situation. I was getting off work at my student internship in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it had been snowing all day. Now for all you guys who live in the South, you know it's a big deal when it even calls for snow, and grocery stores are raided the nights before. I had decided to go and get some groceries to enjoy with my girlfriend, now wife, since the mayhem had ended and only people like me who had trucks or all-terrain vehicles could get around. I went into Walmart and got the groceries I needed and started my way back to my truck. It had started to snow harder and there was already about 5 to 7 inches on the ground. It was about 12 in the afternoon. I was daydreaming about sledding and watching movies the next couple of days with my girlfriend. Just then, as I almost reached my truck, I was jolted by the act of someone grabbing my arm. As I turned around, I saw an older-looking lady who was maybe 5 foot 6 inches. She asked me if I had cigarettes. Now, I don't smoke, so I told her no, I did not, and turned back to my truck. Again, she gently tugged on my arm, and then she told me that she just got here from Alabama on a bus with her granddaughter and dog, and she was here for breast cancer treatment and wanted money for a hotel. Again, I honestly told her I had no money on me, which I purposely do because I don't like donating to people's drug habits and would rather get people food myself if that's what they really need. At this point, she said, "Do you know the area well?" Wanting to get out of this situation, I said no, I did not, which was a lie, thinking she'd now leave me alone. Then she asked, "Oh, okay, well since the weather is so bad, will you drive me to my hotel so I can meet up with my granddaughter and her dog who are in the hotel lobby waiting? It's right up the road here, I can show you." Me being a Christian and was always taught to help people out, so even though everything at this moment told me to deny this woman again, I told her sure, since I was raised on the rule, never judge a book by its cover. Plus, being a male at 6 foot, I figured I could take her if things got dicey. So she jumped in my truck against all odds, and the next thing I know she's smoking a cigarette in my truck, and I told her politely to please put it out. Being nervous, I missed my first red flag when she asked me for a cigarette, since she obviously had some. She obliged and threw the cigarette out the window to my dismay. So we started driving up the road towards her hotel, at which I was on high alert. At the moment of going through worst-case scenarios in my head, I notched her fumbling through her purse, searching for something, and looking out of the corner of her eye at me, at which I told her, "Just so you know, I have a gun in my truck, so don't try anything crazy." Now I did have a gun, but it was a shotgun that I had neglected to get out of the back seat a couple days earlier, and in reality this would do me no good if she pulled a gun on me at that moment. At this she stopped messing around in her purse and pulled out her cell phone in her pocket. She looked at me and said, "Actually, do you mind taking a detour? I need to pick up some money from some friends." Okay, at this point in time, red flags were firing off, but again, never judging a book by its cover kept running through my mind. So I told her that was fine, but we had to make it quick, because I needed to make it home. At that moment, she dialed someone on the phone and said, "Yeah, this guy's coming over to bring me to get the stuff. You're ready, right?" At that point, I asked her to talk to the person. When I answered the phone, a man who sounded like he's been chain-smoking since birth said, "Hello." I started asking him questions like, "What's your name?" and asked him if he indeed knew of any hotels nearby. He seemed to stumble over his words and then said he had to go. At this point, I should have gotten a clue and kicked her out of my car, especially after watching so many horror movies. This is when the person goes against their gut and pays for it. But for fear of her actually telling the truth and me feeling like a terrible person, I decided to go on. At this point, we turned down the street and I saw a cop car sitting there off the side. I wanted to go drop her off with the cop, but I would feel terrible if she was actually telling the truth. So I passed the cop at this point with a weird, eerie smile on her face. She said, "Glad he's there, now I feel safe." Now as we entered the apartment complex, I saw how run down it was. It looked to be a place where heavy drug traffic was going down. Just a very unsettling place, even during the snow. As I parked outside the place she said was her friend's, she said, "Okay, I'll go get the guy and be back." At this, I was very unsettled by everything. Things just didn't seem right. She saw my facial expression of wanting to just get the heck out of Dodge, and to this she sneered at me, saying something along the lines of me being a terrible person if I left her there, in this weather, under her condition. At this I got mad. After all, I went out of my way to help her. As I waited, I started to think about things that could happen. What if she brought back a gun, or worse? At that moment, I saw 3 guys coming towards my truck. I realized things were not right. She had set me up to rob me or something, because these guys were big, and one of them had something behind his back which I couldn't see. At that moment, I put it in reverse and took off. Thank God for 4-wheel drive. I looked back to them chasing me, and to see that what was hidden behind the one guy's back was a crowbar. I don't know what would have happened to me, but now looking back, I see how dumb and blind I was. There was no hotel nearby, close to the area I was in. The nearest hotel or motel was 20 minutes away. Had I waited for the guys to get to my truck, they probably would have beaten me and robbed me, or worse. I thank God every day that I escaped and was able to get married until this event. After that, I have never been to that Walmart ever again, or the area for that matter. A couple of months later, I told a coworker this story, and he told me that a year ago the same lady tried the same thing to him, but he declined altogether. Smart move on his part. So horrible lady who lied about having breast cancer to trick people into awful things, I hope you get what's coming to you, and let's never meet again. Be careful who you help out, because some people will take advantage of you, or even worse. Abandoned buildings are amazing. My mother studied historical preservation, so a love of dilapidated and abandoned structures is in my blood. When you pair this interest with my love of photography, you have a match made in heaven, and fortunately, this pairing is seen as favorable by many of my friends as well. As a rule, I never enter an abandoned place by myself. This has less to do with caution or fear. As a stocky, bearded 22-year-old male, I don't often fear for my safety, but it's primarily for physical safety reasons. When a structure has been left to rot for X number of years, there's a decent chance that you could go through the floor if you're not careful. Where I live in southwestern Ohio, there are a great many exploration opportunities to be found, especially if you take 15 minutes to cross into Indiana. In Richmond, on one of the main strips before you hit the center of the city, there is a massive hospital that has been abandoned since the early 2000s. I had known about the location for ages, as my grandfather had stayed there before its closed during his battle with lung cancer. Last year, I finally found the time and energy to drive up with my friend Luke to check it out. We got there around 2 p.m., which gave us roughly 2 hours before dusk would begin. For pictures and for safety, we had agreed that daylight was a must for this expedition. Upon entering the hospital, it became immediately clear that we were far from the first people to ever visit. The entire place had been gutted, and there was graffiti everywhere, the walls sporting comforting phrases like, "We're watching you," and "Leave my house now." The bulk of the trip was uneventful. We got some great shots and covered some of the primary hospital wings, steering clear of the psych wards and cancer centers. As we gradually made our way up the stairwell to each new floor, we began to notice a pattern. At each landing was a door, and each door had been propped open by a massive wedge of cement or other debris. The doors were shockingly heavy, so we assumed roving graffiti artists and vandals had opted for easier floor access. Granted, it seemed odd, but we didn't think much about it until we were on the 7th floor. I was in one of the old bedrooms getting a shot of some curtains, while Luke stood in the doorway. Suddenly a massive boom sounded from the stairwell we had come from, causing Luke and I to jolt upright. It sounded like it had come from below us, like one of the doors had suddenly slammed. The problem was that none of the doors could have slammed, at least not on their own. Not only were they separated from the doorframe by massive chunks of debris, but they were far too heavy to have caught wind. The only way a door could have slammed was if someone had stood back, held it fully open, and then let it go. not a behavior that one would normally engage in without purpose. After a few seconds of staring at each other with saucer eyes, we decided it was time to go. This meant finding another way down, as our previous way was currently occupied by someone or someone's. There were these little green arrows spray-painted all over the building, and on a gut decision we decided to try and follow them. The ones on this floor all had the word exit written above them, so we felt good about it. It wasn't until we had been following the arrows for about 5 minutes or so that we realized that wherever they were taking us, it was not out of the building. In our fear and desire to leave as quickly as possible, we had neglected to realize that the arrows were taking us deeper into the center of the building. Windows were becoming less frequent, everything was darker, and everything was damp. That was the weirdest part, how damp everything was. We had gone from a destroyed but dry building into an area that was so wet and rife with mold that the walls and floors were going greenish-brown. We never found out what was at the end of the path, or who was leading or pushing us where. After turning back, we found an emergency exit in the corner of the end of the hallway we were able to climb down and escape from. We never saw anyone, but we're sure they saw us. The hospital was mostly windows, which means that literally anyone looking out would have been able to see us coming and going. I'm glad we didn't go further into the dark, wet areas. Who knows what would have been awaiting us there, but surely it wouldn't have been anything good. The door, the spray paint directions, it all seemed too sinister and intentional to be anything like an innocent vandal's prank. The entire time we were following the arrows, something just felt off. The hair was up on my neck, and I was frankly terrified. So whoever decided to stalk us and try and trap us in this abandoned hospital, let's never meet. Ever. So my friend George and I were having some late Friday night fun. We got something to eat at McDonald's, went to the arcade for a bit, then decided to try out some BMX tricks in the park. By the time we got to the park, it was around 12:30 a.m. It was dead silent, so we were pretty loud, considering there was basically no houses around the park's area. After doing quite a bit of tricks, we decided to take a break and sit down. As we drank our water, we heard loud footsteps from the distance, about 45 feet away, I would say. As it got closer, I could begin to see a silhouette of a man walking at a brisk pace along the sidewalk. I passed it off thinking it was just a late-night exercise walker or something. As he turned the corner, we continued our tricks as normal. However, eventually he returned. This time we just ignored him because we thought it wasn't strange at all. However, as I glanced at him, he had stopped walking and just stood there with his arms to his sides, and he would just stare at us. He was about 20 feet away at this point, and he was just staring at us. George just said, "Fucking weird guy, huh?" I did a small nod. I didn't stare at him for too long, just enough to get a glimpse of his body language. After that, we decided to ride as fast as we could down the sidewalk to an empty parking lot in the very back of the park. The man stayed in the same spot and never moved, or so we thought. After about 5 minutes of having no more encounters with the man in the parking lot, I saw him standing at the corner of the parking lot staring at us. George was fed up at this point, and having as big of balls as he has, yelled out, "What the fuck do you want?" The man simply yelled back, "Sorry, I'm just looking for my daughter." "Do we look like your daughter?" George yelled back. The man gave no response and simply walked away. "He's probably just drunk," he said. Before heading home, George and I decided just to take a quick stop at the 7-Eleven, get a few things. As we left the shop, we saw the man, near a gas pump, again staring at us, with an expression on his face that showed he was interested in us. George was fed up and marched straight over to the man. "What do you want?" he yelled. Now both George and I are around 6'2", and were standing over the man menacingly. He was no taller than 5'5", yet he had a look of calmness. "I apologize, I was just, I..." Then he sprinted off into the night. Creepy old fuck. And that was the end of that, for that night. The next day, George and I met up at the park again to do some more BMX tricks. I got a strange feeling that I was being stared at, and I looked all around, but I didn't see anything. I just thought it was an overlaying effect from last night. When George had just finished up a trick, his face went from a "that was awesome" look to a "what the fuck." As I turned around, in the giant shrubs, there was the man again, staring at us. George started to quickly walk towards the man, and he just kept staring. Eventually the man began to sprint away, but he had something in his hand. It was a video camera. "You were fucking recording us?" But the man was too far gone to continue. On the ground in the shrubs, we found dropped CDs and an iPhone. We immediately took them home and looked over them. The iPhone was filled with nothing but words on Notepad, and it read, "Those two boys are too pretty. I'll have to see if they'll sing in the rain." We never really could discover what that meant. But on the music app on the phone, there was nothing but singing in the rain songs, compositions or covers, nothing more. And the background was of Gene Kelly singing the song. We were already creeped out, but dared to look at the CDs. On them, there were tons of videos of George and I doing things, from BMXing to talking on the street to going to fast food restaurants. But the thing is, the oldest videos were from 7 months ago. Alright, that was it. Thank you so much for watching as usual. Thank you so much to everyone who's subscribed recently. I can't believe I'm at 24 subscribers. I know that that's not a lot, but to me that's really amazing. And the fact that I just uploaded a video yesterday and it's already at 100 views is just crazy to me. So thank you so much for everybody's support. I really appreciate it. I'm still going to keep making these videos. I really like making them. I don't plan on stopping anytime soon, for anybody that's wondering. I really enjoy doing this, and I want to keep doing it. This picture here is a picture of me, obviously. My friend Canny photoshopped it for me. It's really cute. I like it a lot. It's a little bit old, but I really like it. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you so much again, and I really like doing this. I look forward to making more videos. My next one will be either Wednesday or Thursday next week, because those are my 2 days off. So, thank you so much!